Sold to the Alpha King. Chapter 19. The fortress crouched beneath a pale indigo sky, its stones breathing chill pre-dawn silence while every heart inside beat too loud for comfort. Alara moved along the parapet beside Ezra, the swish of her cloak nearly the only sound. Below them, soldiers tightened straps and whispered farewells into the wind, and cook fires smoldered, releasing thin fingers of smoke that carried the faint scent of thyme and ash. Alara forced steady breaths, though a flutter pressed beneath her ribs, half nausea, half a tremor of new life she had felt for 3 nights running. She would keep that secret close a little longer. Ezra paused at each watchpost, laying a palm to cold stone, murmuring encouragement to sentries whose eyes shone amber in torchlight. Weariness shadowed the silver streaks in his hair, but purpose kept his shoulders square. When he found a loose crossbeam, he wedged it firm and nodded approval at the relieved guard. "You see everything?" Alara said quietly once they moved on. "It is easier than seeing too little." Ezra gave her a small smile, but she sensed the storm beneath it, his memory of the first siege, of loved ones lost, of the weight he carried. She looped her arm through his, offering calm through their bond. He squeezed gently, gratitude pulsing back. They descended the inner stair to the infirmary. The air was warm with simmering comfrey and sharp pine distillate. Seren worked like moonlit water amid cots of bandaged warriors, her soft words gliding over groans of pain. She looked up as Alara approached, dipping a curtsy that nearly spilled a ladle. "Easy," Alara teased, catching the bowl. "No one heals if the healer faints." Seren released a short laugh. "I'll rest when Damien rests, and I suspect that is sometime after the next moon." Her gaze flicked toward the doors where the commander's voice rumbled orders. A blush warmed her cheeks. Alara passed the bowl to a young healer, then knelt beside a boy barely old enough to lift a short sword. She pressed cool fingers to his fevered brow. "You will return to training soon," she promised, weaving a sliver of light that eased the boy's trembling. His hazel eyes widened. Wonder replaced fear. Around them, murmurs of hope fluttered like wings. Ezra leaned under the arch, watching her. Pride softened the tired lines around his eyes. Damien strode in, wiping grease from his gauntlets. Lucas followed, lugging coils of rope. "Western gate reinforced," Damien reported. "We put a flame gutter above the hinges." "And stacked spears in 3 rows," Lucas added. "If Orith wants entrance, he'll have to knock politely." He flashed a grin at Seren, who shook her head but smiled back. Ezra clasped Damien's wrist. "Good. When first light hits, keep cavalry on the south flank. Lucas, take archers to the ridge tower. Signal patterns stay unchanged." Lucas saluted. "Wouldn't dream of improvising." His grin faltered when his gaze settled on Alara. The firelight on her face must have reminded him why they fought. He touched 2 fingers to his brow in solemn respect and marched out. Damien lingered near Seren, his steel-edged eyes softening. "I brought your herbs," he said, drawing a pouch from his belt. "Found them myself." Seren's mouth curved. She accepted the bundle, their fingers brushing. The gruff commander seemed to forget the entire war for a heartbeat. Ezra cleared his throat kindly. Damien's spine straightened. "Right. Patrol." He turned to Alara. "You and the Alpha hold the center. We'll keep you informed." He nodded to Ezra and left, shoulders squared, but Alara caught Seren's trembling smile chasing him. When the door shut, Ezra extended a hand to Alara. "There are still ramparts to walk." She followed. The queasiness rose again on the spiral staircase. She paused, palm to her abdomen. Ezra stopped 2 steps above, brushing her shoulder. Concern slid through their link. "I am fine," she thought, sending a whisper of reassurance. A ripple of warmth pushed back. His trust, and his promise. Atop the wall, the sky glimmered pink, edges bleeding gold. Alara's breath clouded. This might be the last piece before the storm. She drew Ezra aside, into a niche between merlons where ivy curled. Without a word, she guided his gloved hand to rest on her stomach. The chain of his gauntlet links ticked softly. His brows furrowed, questioning. She looked out at the paling horizon. "Whatever happens," she said softly, "remember this moment." Ezra's hand remained, heat radiating through leather. He leaned in, pressing a kiss to her hair. "I will remember every breath." She almost spoke the secret then, but a horn note rose, low, 3 pulses, from the east watch. Scouts spotted movement. Ezra's jaw set. He gave her hand a final squeeze and stepped into command. Across the courtyard, warriors flooded to assigned posts, forming ranks. Drums thundered once, twice, firming spines. Alara climbed the central tower. The pendant from her mother and the moonstone from Ezra thumped together against her sternum. Tiny hearts of light. Eamon waited, robes fluttering, staff braced. Cassian, fragile but stubborn, stood at the rune-tiled floor's edge, fingers poised to weave protective sigils. They exchanged nods, no time for fear. Thunder cracked. On the far ridge, black siege towers rolled, hauled by skeletal beasts bound in iron. Between them marched armored figures wreathed in violet haze. Above, clouds churned as if stirred by unseen claws. From the center of that maelstrom strode Orith, cloak billowing, runes cut across his skin burning with unholy flame. Ezra's roar carried across the battlements. "Archers ready!" Flaming arrows launched, painting streaks of ember that hammered siege sheet iron. Spells collided mid-air. Shadow bolts splattered against Alara's barrier, each impact a punch to her ribs. She braced, singing under her breath lines of the Dawn Circle's hymn. Power thrummed outward, turning their fear to resolve. Ezra leaped from the western stairs, shifting mid-air into wolf form. Larger now, silver streaks arcing along his spine, eyes bright with moonlight. He hit the cobbles running, leading a wedge of wolves through the gate as the outer door split to release them. Damien's cavalry thundered behind, lances tipped in fire. Lucas's archers rained death from high turrets, flames igniting siege towers' tarred hides. But for every wooden giant ablaze, 2 more rolled in its wake. From their maws poured creatures stitched of bone and nightmare. They crashed into pike lines, steel rang on obsidian claw. Seren appeared beside Eamon, sleeves rolled, satchels full. She pressed a vial into Alara's hand. "For strength," she said. "Drink." Alara swallowed the bitter tonic, heat blooming in her limbs. Cassian's runes flared bright, a ring of pale fire encircling the keep's base. Shadow bolts slammed the barrier and rebounded in sprays of sparks. Everywhere fear churned, but inside her chest, light answered, an insistent fluttering echo. Alara's gaze snapped beyond the main melee to a series of obsidian spires rising behind enemy lines. 3 towers humming like inverted hearts. Black lightning crawled up their sides. Eamon followed her stare, face ashen. "Shadow furnace," he whispered. "He means to drink every fear at once." Ezra, mid-battle, caught the vision through their link. A plan flashed. He would carve a path. She would burn the spires. No hesitation. She vaulted the parapet, landing deftly on a lower wall, staff blazing with flame. Ezra's wolf gaze locked on hers. Then he barreled through enemy ranks, scattering shadow beasts. Alara sprinted along the wall, casting shielding pulses to protect wolves below. Arrows whooshed past her hair. Shadow claws scraped stone inches from her heels. She leaped down near the southern breach where Ezra knocked a siege beast clear. He shifted, sword drawn. "Stay behind me," he said, voice ragged but steady. "Only if you keep up," she replied, fire swirling in her palm. He grinned, then charged. They advanced in tandem. Each time a claw or spear sought her, Ezra parried. Each time a shadow leapt his flank, she seared it from existence. Damien's squad flanked left, Lucas's archers provided cover. Cassian's barrier pulsed, casting rings of comfort across fighters. Seren appeared in the chaos, dragging an injured scout to safety. She and Damien exchanged a single fierce look that spoke volumes. The air grew cold as they neared the spires. Lightning arced overhead, thunderous and wrong. Ash fell like black snow, stinging skin. Alara's pendant and moonstone glowed bright, warm contrast to the chill. She dropped to her knees before the first spire, tracing dawn runes on its base. Firelight spilled, creeping up obsidian, cracking it like glass. A concussive boom rocked the field. Spike one down. Ezra shielded her from the blast, snarling as shadow spearmen converged. He whirled, blade singing, silver wolf stripe flaring bright. In 2 heartbeats, the attackers lay smoldering. They sprinted to the second spire. Alara carved faster despite trembling limbs. This time, black talons burst from the stone to snare her wrist. She gasped. Ezra shouted, hacking claws away. Pain flared. Blood smeared her sleeve. She pressed wounded palm to the rune, finishing the sequence. Light speared the tower. Another boom, another fissure in the enemy's heart. Smoke stung her lungs, dizziness swirling. She staggered. Ezra caught her waist. Through the bond, she felt his worry, his fierce love. Almost there, she sent. Always here, he returned. The third spire stood tall, but Orith awaited atop it, cloak snapping in an unnatural wind. He raised his staff, violet fire coiling. Thunder hushed. Shadows around him froze, kneeling in deference. His eyes, pits of starless night, bore into Alara. Little flame, he called, voice echoing in skulls and sky. You carry more than power now, a spark unborn. Hand it to me, and your fortress lives. Chill crashed through her veins. Ezra stepped forward, sword raised. Orith gestured. Walls of darkness erupted, splintering earth, driving wolves back. Alara saw Ezra thrown clear, pinned under debris and beasts. Their link strained, but held. Stay, his thought roared. Protect the child. Her fingers brushed her abdomen. A fierce resolve blazed. She drew the vial of wardstone dust from her pouch, gripping it tight. Then she faced the spire alone. Orith descended in swirling smoke. You will kneel, he hissed, extending claws of shadow. Illusions slammed into her mind, visions of fortress flames, Ezra fallen, her baby's cry silenced. She swayed. From distant rubble, Ezra's voice rang in her mind. I see you, Alara. I believe. She crushed the vial. Gold dust burst around her, forming a swirling halo. The illusions shattered. Orith hissed, recoiling. Alara raised both hands, summoning flame not of rage but of love. Images of Ezra smiling, Cassian's pride, Damien and Serene's shy affection, the flutter of life inside her. Light poured from her chest, weaving around Orith's claws, unraveling them strand by strand. Choose, she said, voice calm yet thunderous with power. Let love free you or fade to dust. Orith shrieked, lunging. She could have struck him down, but she released no blade. She opened her palms wider, flooding him with light. He staggered, flesh flickering between man and smoke. Hate twisted his features. I cannot exist without fear, he rasped. Then you choose your own end, she whispered. The light within him shattered. With a final cry, Orith dissolved into drifting ash that caught the dawn breeze, scattering across crimson sky. Silence fell. The remaining shadow constructs crumpled, empty shells. Wolves howled in triumph as the first true sunlight broke through dissipating clouds. Ezra limped toward the base, grime streaking his cheek. Alara met him halfway. He crushed her to his chest. She buried fingers in blood-spattered hair, tears mixing with sweat. Through their link, relief surged so intense it left them weak. I heard your heart, he whispered. It beats for us, she answered, laying his hand to her belly. The warmth he sensed earlier pulsed stronger now. Cheers erupted from battlements. Damien emerged, arm in sling, Serene clasping his hand. Lucas stumbled beside them, laughing and crying at once. Cassian, supported by Aemon, lifted a trembling fist toward the sky, eyes shining with unshed tears. Elders approached, heads bowed. The eldest knelt, pressing a palm to Alara's scorched boot. Light of the dawn, he murmured, voice ragged with awe. Ezra lifted Alara's hand, kissing bruised knuckles. Around them, warriors chanted her new title, each repetition washing grief into hope. But Alara heard only Ezra's ragged breath and the tiny, steady flutter beneath her palm, promising tomorrow. As the roar of victory echoed along the walls, Alara steadied herself against Ezra, pulse still pounding in her ears. Flames guttered and shattered braziers, sending orange tongues over the courtyard bricks where warriors stood dazed amid heaps of smoldering shadow husks. Some embraced, others sank to their knees and wept, laughter and sobs mingling in one vast exhale of released terror. Ezra guided her to the outer ward where healers hurried between makeshift cots. Seren darted among them, braid coming loose, hands stained with salve. She knelt beside a limping soldier, binding his thigh, while her gaze kept flitting toward the gate. Damien emerged through the ruined archway, shirt torn, sling holding his broken arm. At sight of him, Seren dropped bandages and ran. He caught her one-armed, lifting her clean off the ground despite his grimace of pain. "You promised to stay under cover," he murmured, forehead against hers. "And you promised not to make me wait," she replied, voice cracking. She kissed him without the shyness of earlier days, the courtyard swelling with cheers at the sight. Lucas limped past, wiping soot from his brow. "About time," he called, grin crooked as ever. He reached them and threw an arm around the pair. "If you still insist on formalities, I can officiate right here, though I am fond of ale at proper celebrations." Damien rolled his eyes, but gratitude shimmered under the jest. Alara smiled, warmed by their joy. Ezra squeezed her hand, then guided her toward the inner keep. Elders stepped from torch shadows, robes singed, fatigue carved into brows. The eldest, Torin, spoke first. "You have given us dawn, Lady Alara." His voice roughened with emotion. "We doubted, and you led. On behalf of the council, we ask forgiveness and pledge fealty to our Luna." Alara felt Ezra's pride swell beside her. She inclined her head. "Stand with us in rebuilding, and your pledge is fulfilled." Torin bowed low. Others followed, relief softening their stiff backs. Cassian approached on Amon's arm, eyes shining with relief and exhaustion. He rested a trembling hand on Alara's shoulder. "My child." He could say no more before tears breached. Alara drew him into a gentle embrace. "Rest, father. The fortress needs your counsel tomorrow. Tonight, you heal with us." She turned to Ezra. "Help me get him to the infirmary." Together they guided Cassian through corridors heavy with smoke scent. Survivors lined the passage to touch Alara's arm, Ezra's cloak, murmuring blessings. At the ward threshold, Cassian paused, clutching Amon's sleeve. "My daughter will need you, old friend," he said. Amon inclined his head. "My faith is renewed, Cassian. Sleep now." Cassian pressed a kiss to Alara's crown, then allowed Seren's assistance to settle him. Alara caught Seren's hand. "Thank you," she whispered. "We all fought," Seren answered, cheeks pink. She glanced where Damien waited by the door, then back at Alara. "Tomorrow we mend everything." Her gaze dropped briefly to Alara's abdomen. "Everything," she repeated, something knowing in her eyes. Alara felt heat rise to her cheeks but only nodded. Outside stars glittered sharp against ink sky cleansed of storm clouds. Ezra guided Alara across the quiet courtyard where embers glowed in spent braziers. He halted at the central fountain, its water black with ash. "I should stay with patrols until sunrise," he said, yet his eyes lingered on her face. "The pack can hold the walls," she answered, reaching to brush coal dust from his jaw. "You have given them courage. Now you are allowed peace." He exhaled, shoulders sagging as adrenaline ebbed. He cupped her nape, thumb stroking soot from behind her ear. "You saved us all, Alara. Without hate, without bloodlust." The prophecy spoke truth. She laid her palm over his heart, feeling it thunder. "And you guarded my light until I could wield it. We did this together." Through their link memories flashed. his sword flashing crimson at dawn, her runes glowing gold, Damien's cavalry charge, Serene's steady hands, Cassian's circle of fire. A tapestry of unity. Ezra kissed her gently, lanterns reflecting in damp lashes. "Let me take you home," he murmured. They climbed the spiral to their chamber. The corridor candles burned low, casting wavering halos. Inside, the room felt untouched by battle. Blankets folded, bath hung with lavender sprigs, the cedar box still on the shelf. Alara paused by the window, gazing across battlements where distant figures extinguished torches. Ezra latched the door softly, then set his sword aside. He crossed, wrapping arms around her from behind, warmth easing the ache of spent magic. She melted back against his chest. "Tell me the truth," he whispered near her ear. "What changed tonight?" "Before the duel I felt something, stronger than fear, beyond fire." Alara turned within his embrace. Candlelight flickered over his beloved face. Soot-streaked skin, silvered hair matted by sweat, eyes brimming with tenderness. She took his calloused hands, guiding them to her abdomen where the faintest curve had begun to bud. "I wanted to tell you before," she said, voice thick. "I carry more than flame now. I carry our child." Ezra's breath caught. His hands trembled as though lifting the most fragile treasure. "Are you certain?" he rasped. She nodded, tears spilling despite her smile. "I have felt the flutter for days. I used its heartbeat tonight. It reminded me what future we fight for." Joy punched the air from his lungs. Laugh and sob tangled in one ragged sound. He dropped to his knees, pressing his lips to the spot beneath her hands. "Thank you," he whispered, voice breaking. "Thank you for this life." She wove fingers through his hair, heart swelling near to bursting. He rose then, cupping her face, kissing tear tracks from her cheeks. "We will build that garden," he vowed, voice hoarse. "We will teach them stars and song. And let them choose their own light," she added. A gentle knock intruded, Lucas sheepish in the doorway. "Hate to interrupt, Alpha, but the men insist on hearing that both of you still breathe." Ezra laughed, wiping eyes. "Tell them their Luna battles no more tonight." He glanced at Alara. She nodded. Lucas grinned, saluted, and disappeared. Ezra barred the door again. Candle flame painted amber across stone as he helped Alara remove soot-stained leathers. Gentle fingers traced bruises, kissing each one. She undid his cloak, pulled the shirt over his battered shoulders. Their bodies bore blood crust and ash streaks, yet to each other they gleamed. They slid beneath linen, limbs entangling. Ezra curled around her protectively, one hand splayed over the gentle swell, thumb stroking in awe, the other cradled her hair. "Are you afraid now?" he asked through the hush. "No." She exhaled slow. Fear fed Orith. Love ended him. "Our family is the brightest ward." He pressed his forehead to hers, voice a cracked whisper. "I almost lost you today." She kissed him, deep and lingering. "You never will. Rest, Alpha. Dawn brings rebuilding." They settled, breaths synchronizing, exhaustion at last allowed to claim muscles and heart. Through the open window drifted quiet night sounds. Distant laughter of soldiers relieved, soft clatter of armor stored away. An owl questioning the empty sky. Alara lay awake a moment more, feeling Ezra's steady heartbeat and the tiny flutter beneath her own palm. Moonlight poured silver over their entwined forms. She sent a last silent prayer of thanks, to her mother's memory, to the pack's courage, to the child within, and closed her eyes. Outside, under stars bright as newborn embers, the fortress at last exhaled, holding its heroes in gentle silence, until morning promised the first peaceful sunrise in far too long. Gray-blue dawn bled through latticed shutters hours later, coaxing Alara from sleep. She lay still, savoring the warmth of Ezra's chest against her back, his arm curved protectively over her waist, hand resting where their child stirred in faint fluttering dreams. Beneath the hush she caught distant hammer clangs, low voices, a rooster greeting a fortress that was still, unbelievably, standing. Ezra woke with a soft inhale. His lips brushed her shoulder. "Morning, Luna." She turned, tracing a thumb over the faint dent on his forehead left by a shadow blade's graze. "Morning, Alpha." He smiled at the honorifics, then kissed her gently, lingering as if to reassure himself she was real. "I dreamed of lavender fields, you and a toddler chasing butterflies." "Lavender?" She laughed quietly. "Our child will see more than lavender, whole forests unsullied by fear." A knock paused their whispers. Lucas's voice carried muffled through the door. "Hate to intrude on newly minted parents. Yes, rumors move fast, but the elders want an audience before midday meal." Ezra glanced at Alara. She nodded, amusement flickering. "Tell them we'll be there shortly," Ezra called back. "Very good, try to wear clean clothes. The courtyard smells worse than the latrine." Lucas's retreating footsteps faded, along with his muttered commentary on romance delaying logistics. They rose, washing quickly in the basin. Ezra donned a fresh tunic only slightly charred at the hem. Alara slipped into a simple sky-hued dress Amon's apprentices had left folded. She clasped her mother's opal pendant and the moonstone together, feeling their twin warmth settle above her heart. Descending the stairs, they found Amon leaning on his staff, conversing with Serene and Damien at the corridor arch. Damien's sling had been replaced with a sturdier brace. Serene's hand rested on his elbow, guiding him when he winced. Amon's eyes brightened. "Good. You're awake. The council awaits in the great hall." He inspected their flushed cheeks and exchanged a knowing look with Serene, who blushed. Damien cleared his throat. "We're escorting you." His voice still rumbled command, but warmth softened it. As they walked, he murmured near Ezra's ear, "Lucas wasn't joking. Word spread that you'll be a father." Ezra's brows lifted. "Wolves gossip faster than ravens." Serene chuckled. "One healer saw the Luna faint last week. Another saw her speak with midwife Lyra about certain teas. News traveled on bandage rolls." Alara pressed a palm to her abdomen, cheeks warm but not embarrassed. "The pack has a right to joy after so much loss." Her gaze found Damien and Serene's intertwined fingers. Joy spreads. In the great hall, tapestry still smelled of smoke yet hung proudly. Benches brimmed with warriors in hastily mended armor, servants in clean aprons, elders wrapped in ceremonial cloaks. Torrin stepped forward, staff, tapping stone. Beside him stood Cassian, pale but upright, supported by Lucas on one side, a sturdy cane on the other. Torrin lifted his voice. "Alpha Ezra Bloodwolf, Luna Alara Whiteleaf Bloodwolf. Your pack greets you." He lowered his head, and rows of elders followed, kneeling. The hall rippled as warriors and servants knelt, a sea of lowered heads broken only by Cassian, who remained standing, tears trembling in his eyes as pride overwhelmed weakness. Alara's breath caught. Ezra squeezed her hand, then spoke, tone carrying warmth. "Rise, elders, family, friends. Your courage forged this dawn." He motioned to Cassian. "Our victory belongs to every heart." Torrin raised his staff. "We witnessed the prophecy fulfilled, the shadow unmade. It is our honor to bestow a new title upon our Luna." He nodded to two apprentices who bore forward a cloak of deep midnight blue embroidered with swirling flames in silver and sunrise gold. "Alara Bloodwolf, Light of the Dawn, Keeper of the Heartfire." Alara's breath shivered as Ezra lifted the cloak and settled it on her shoulders. Applause thundered through the hall, echoing off vaults. She caught Cassian's gaze. He mouthed, "Proud of you." Amon stepped next, holding a bound ledger. The prophecy's final verse speaks of a child born of dawn flame and silver wolf. Such a child shall herald peace beyond war. Murmurs traveled. Amon closed the book. This future begins in her womb. Ezra's brow arched. Apparently news reached even dusty tomes. He turned to the hall, unapologetic joy brightening battle-weary features. "Yes," he announced, voice warm as hearthlight. "We expect our first pup." A ripple of jubilant howls and cheers shook chandeliers. Warriors pounded fists on shields. Elders wiped eyes. Lucas cupped hands to his mouth. "Name the child after me if you want constant trouble." "Or after me for impeccable manners," Seren called, laughter carrying over general mirth. Damien tugged a curl behind her ear, grinning despite pain. Ezra raised palms for quiet. "Let us honor our fallen next. At dusk we light pyres on the ridge. In daylight, we rebuild." He signaled the scribes. Task lists appeared. Warriors dispersed into role groups, eager energy renewing limbs that hours before could scarcely stand. Throughout the morning, Alara walked courtyard paths, cloak trailing like evening sky. Children of servants peeked from doorways, eyes wide. She knelt to speak gently, showing them how to coax seedlings sprouting near the well back to health rather than trampling them. A little girl touched her opal pendant. "My ma'am says you stopped nightmares," the child whispered. "Nightmares fade when we choose to dream brighter," Alara answered, glancing toward Ezra, who directed masons patching the gate. His smile reached her, tether of light between them pulsing. Cassian approached midday, leaning less on his cane. "Your wolves carve a memorial stone," he said. "Celine would sing her thanks." He studied her cloak. "And you? How does the dawn feel?" Weightless yet grounded. She placed his hand over her stomach. "Soon you'll hold a grandchild." Tears welled. He exhaled. "I will live for that." The afternoon sun slanted when Alara found Damien overseeing salvage from broken siege towers. Seren arrived with waterskins, scolding him for ignoring pain. Lucas leaned against a beam, smirking. A commander under healer's orders, fortress saved indeed. Damien shot him a glare softened by a half-smile. "Eat arrows, Lucas." Seren turned to Alara. "He never listens unless threats involve stitches." Alara winked. "Offer kisses instead. Heals quicker." Damien's ears reddened. Lucas roared with laughter. By sunset, pyres lined the ridge. Ezra and Alara stood hand in hand as names were spoken into dusk. Flames licked the darkening sky, sparks rising like souls taking flight. The pack's mournful howl began low, gathering strength until it swept across hills and forests that only hours ago rang with clash and cry. When the last spark drifted, Ezra guided Alara back to their chamber. He lit a single taper on the sill, extinguishing others. Soft gloom wrapped them. Outside, crickets sang and, somewhere distant, a lullaby floated. Seren, humming to the wounded perhaps, or merely the wind through broken shutters. Ezra sat on the edge of the bed, drawing Alara between his knees. "Are you frightened? Carrying our future?" "I was," she admitted, "but love outweighs fear now." She traced his jaw. "You?" "I fear only not being present for every heartbeat." He pressed his lips to her stomach. "Hello," he whispered. "I'm your father. I promise gardens and stories and lavender nights." Alara's eyes misted. She combed fingers through his hair. "And I promise songs, stars, and choices, free from shadow." He stood, cupping her cheeks. "Then let dawn find us ready." Their kiss tasted of salt and honey, of endings and beginnings intertwined. They undressed slowly, careful of bruises. The bed welcomed them with soft sheets smelling faintly of lavender. Clothes, titles, prophecy, all drifted away until only skin, breath, and the quiet thunder of entwined hearts remained. Ezra traced gentle circles over her stomach while she mapped constellations across his shoulders. Words gave way to silence deeper than any spell. A communion of souls, vibrant beneath the rising moon. They drifted into sleep, wrapped in each other, window open to fresh night air. A soft breeze carried the distant hammer strike of builders already mending walls, the laughter of soldiers sharing first peaceful supper, the hushed thanks of healers laying down empty stretchers. Above, stars burned high and clear, no longer veiled by shadow storms. each one a lantern for brave souls, as Celine had once promised her daughter long ago. And in that starlit hush, the fortress began its quiet rebirth, guarded by an Alpha King, guided by a light of dawn, and quickened by the gentle heartbeat of a hope the Shadow King could never touch.